Hello, everybody. Welcome into a new episode of Capital View, a webcast brought to you by the Daily Journal and djournal.com. I'm your host, Brad Locke, joined as always by Capitol Bureau Chief Bobby Harrison down there in Jackson. How you doing there, Bobby?
All right, Brad. Between your cough and my sinuses, I hope we can make it through this, but maybe we can.
I hope so too. I already had the camera on you when I was talking to Open, so I've already messed that up. But yeah, I think I'm better than I was last week, but now you've got it somehow.
Yeah.
I'll try not to. I still got a cough that's lingering, so I'll try not to hack into the microphone, and I'll try to do better on the camera work here. But thanks for to everybody who's listening or watching, rather, and listening. And this comes to you normally every Monday about 2 o'clock, but we had to delay it this week. So here we are now. And if you miss it, you can watch the replay, of course, if you just want to watch it again. Talking about what's going on in the state legislature, of course. That's the point of this program. And they're in session, so plenty going on. Bobby, let's start with EdBuild. Of course, they presented their recommendations last week for rewriting the state education funding formula. Of course, we've got the Mississippi Adequate Education Program in place, but it's not been fully funded in a while. And so they hired EdBuild, the legislative leaders did, to come up with some changes or a new formula. And it seems, Bobby, that basically there are still more questions than answers. Specifically, how much is each school district going to get under this new formula?
That's right, Brad. Until the EdBuild representatives provided sort of ranges of different funding levels for different things that they thought should be included in the formula. Like teacher pay was obviously a big part of, average teacher pay was obviously a big part of the formula, but they also presented a proposal where the legislature would provide a teacher pay raise, which would up the average teacher pay, which would, of course, increase the amount of money going to the formula. So they said they couldn't provide an apples to apples comparison to how much each school district got for under the current MAEP formula versus the EdBuild recommendation. And but what we do know under one of her recommendations, Brad, which was not to get too far in the weeds, but one of her recommendations would cost about 53 school districts, including Tupelo, Oxford,
Baldwin, Aberdeen, and Starkville, Tibaha.
Yeah, those districts, it would cost them. The legislature enacts that part of the proposal. We know it would cost those school districts money. So we know that up front. Now, as the legislators say, these are simply recommendations from EdBuild. So this is not the legislature and the governor have the final say. But the flip side of that is they did pay EdBuild, what was it, $100,000 to come up with these recommendations. So I don't know about you, Brad. If I pay somebody $100,000, I'm going to kind of pay attention to what they say.
Yeah, no doubt. You're talking about these school districts could lose some state funding. Tupelo, for instance, could lose $4.2 million in state funding. And again, already they're getting shorted because the MAEP is not being fully funded. And I'm not good at math, Bobby, but there's a lot of math involved with this this whole deal from EdBuild. Right now, the MAEP says, no school district has to contribute more than 27% in local funds toward the base student cost. And then you've got the whole aspect of, more affluent areas contributing a larger share toward the base cost. So it just kind of gets even more confusing there.
Yeah, it is confusing. What it is, Brad, let's see if I can make this real simple. Say the MAEP formula, just to use a real simple round number, said the base student cost was $100 per student. Of course, it's more closer to $5,000 per student, but let's say $100 per student, and they multiply that times the number of students in the school, and then from there they the MAEP formula says that each school district shall be responsible for 28 meals of that. 28 meals, of course, is just a tax and is a amount of taxes that you'd pay, but they say 28 meals or 27%, whichever is less. Now, some of these school districts are only having to pay 27% because 28 meals are bringing more than 28 meals are bringing more than 27%. So these school districts, which include Tupelo, would be penalized if they removed that 27% provision as EdBuild recommends. And it would be a double whammy for Tupelo because Tupelo is currently at the 55 mil cap. They can't raise any more local taxes, so they'd be losing 4.2 million that they wouldn't be able to replace unless, as as part of the EdBuild proposal, they also removed that 55 mil cap. And of course, then you get into the debate about whether Tupelo really wants to raise taxes again locally. So this does fit into the argument that some made that this EdBuild proposal is going to be in a local property tax raise for a lot of school districts. So we'll see how that works out in the legislation.
Yeah, well, you had a story about that. You also had a story just I think it was on Sunday, talking about just the math of everything. Hob Bryan, of course, he was one of the architects of MAEP back in 1997, and he said after the presentation he really couldn't make heads or tails of the thing. And again, he and others want to see how much state revenue the new formula will produce for each district compared to MAEP. I think you may have mentioned earlier apparently it's hard to do an apples to apples kind of comparison.
Until the legislation is hammered down,
right,
and we know exactly what the legislature, what the bill is going to say, you can't make that apples to apples comparison. And back when they did pass MAEP in '97, it wasn't exactly the dark ages, but technology wasn't what it is today. But each time they made a little change in the formula, as they debated exactly what they were going to do, they would take a break and then run those changes through the calculator or whatever it was, to the computer, and determine how much each district would be affected by the changes they were making. So it was a long, tedious process. And if they do that, and and a lot of people saying they should do the same thing with EdBuild to know exactly how these changes, if they are made, will affect each school district. And Brad, I keep on saying, just as an aside, right now they can't fund MAEP. They're $172 million short for this school year. Since 2008, they're $1.8 billion short. They fully funded it twice since '97. So if they can't fully fund MAEP, I don't know if the argument is even worth having about whether EdBuild is going to produce more money for the school districts, because they can't fund what they got now. How are they going to fund something that provides more money for the school districts? I mean, I keep coming back to that.
Yeah, you think if they get all this trouble to rewrite it, they'd actually, try to fully fund the thing. Going back to some math and some numbers, according to Rebecca Sibilia, the CEO of EdBuild, she says the student-based cost provided by MAEP is about almost $4,700. The Department of Education says it's more like $5,300, almost $5,400. Yeah, I mean, we don't know why there's a discrepancy there, do we?
I do not know, but I mean, I would, under state law, the Department of Education numbers are on MAEP are also certified by an accountant. Right. So I would venture to guess that number is right. I don't know if she left something out of her calculations. I'm not sure how that came about, but I did think that was an interesting side note to this whole debate, is that we can't even agree on the numbers. You got facts, and you got those alternative facts, I guess.
That's right, Bobby. We can disagree on facts, can't we? Well, let's kind of stay in the education vein a little bit. Phil Bryant, the governor, had his State of the State speech last Tuesday, and of course he touched on education. He also talked a good bit about the lottery, which could be a source of revenue for education funding, as we've discussed in the past. He seems a lot more open to it than he was even a year ago, the possibility of a state lottery, isn't he, Bobby? Yeah, that's right. A year ago, but this time he was saying he was adamantly opposed to a lottery. Last week in the State of the State, for the second time in an official statement, he said he would be open to discussions about enacting a lottery in Mississippi. He even pointed out in Arkansas, neighboring Arkansas, which is a state that has similar, maybe not demographics, but similar population numbers. He said they recently enacted a lottery, and they generate about $80 million of revenue for the state. And in Mississippi, where revenue has been hard to come by lately, and budgets have been being cut left and right, that $80 million possibly getting that would be enticing to a lot of folks. But there's still a long way to go. I wouldn't bet on the lottery, but Speaker Philip Gahn is adamantly opposed to it, and he's in a position of influence. So, but we'll just have to see what happens as the process goes along. I mean, is it one of those things that it's? Some people see it as a moral issue. Others see it as just a pragmatic issue. Again, the money's going out of state. The money could come here, and it would be, beneficial. I mean, I see the moral argument. I think a lot of people do. A lot of people just think gambling's wrong. So, I don't know. At some point, will the pragmatism outweigh the moral aspect of it?
Yeah, I think that's what's happened. It is happening before our very eyes with Bryant, who's a social conservative. Most of these issues, he's very, very conservative. He reluctantly agreed to after Katrina to agree to allow casinos to move just a little bit inland, out of the water. He's not a big, never has been a big gaming proponent. But I think what he refers to is he sees the money leaving the state. Alabama doesn't have a lottery, but Louisiana, our other neighboring states, Louisiana, Arkansas, and Tennessee do. And you hear all sorts of anecdotal evidence about people driving across state lines to buy those lottery tickets, especially when you have a big Powerball like you did about this time last year. There were a lot of people doing that, I think.
Sure were.
And so we'll have to see. Brad, next Tuesday is a key deadline. It's the deadline to get bills out of the committee. Now there's been lottery bills filed at least in the House, maybe some in the Senate too. So Tuesday is the deadline to get one of those bills out of committee. But that doesn't, if one doesn't come out of the committee, that doesn't necessarily mean the issue's dead in the legislative process. If there is a bill alive that would be similar to, last year, there was no lottery bill, but the House actually amended over the Speaker's objections, I should say, amended a bill dealing with fantasy sports to include a lottery, and that passed the House, died later in the process. So, but House is on record for passing a lottery. So, but next Tuesday's a key deadline for stuff like the lottery, the EdBuild legislation, just for a lot of important pieces of legislation.
So we got a busy week ahead as people prepare for that, don't we?
That's right. That's right.
All right. Well, good stuff as always, Bobby. Keeping track of things, of which so many bills being filed. How do you keep track of all the bills, Bobby? I'm sure they've got a way for you to do that. But it seems like there's so many bills being filed and often dealing with the same subject matter.
Right. There's literally, I don't have the exact numbers, but there's literally multiple thousands of bills filed each session. I think maybe around 500 or 600 of those pass, and about a third of those are just appropriations bills funding state government.
Sure.
So it's but the legislature has a real good website that I would that you can follow those things. And I would anybody interested, I recommend, and I don't just Googling Mississippi legislature and finding that website, and you can keep it with the bill you're interested in.
All right. Good stuff again, Bobby. Again, Capitol View, a webcast brought to you by the Daily Journal, normally coming to you every Monday at 2 o'clock. We'll try to get back on schedule next week. But if you miss it, you can watch the replay later in the day here at djournal.com. Follow Bobby on Twitter at BobbyHarrison9. I'm on there as well at Bradlock. And Bobby, just keep at it, man. I know there's a lot to cover this week, and y'all can follow his coverage in the Daily Journal and at djournal.com. So until next time, I'm Bradlock. Bobby, have a good one, man.
You too, Brad. Take care.
See y'all next time.